Democracy depends on a free press. Please support our independent journalism at democracynow.org/give. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. President Donald Trump has ordered the U.S. to suspend all military aid to Ukraine. The stunning reversal came just days after Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance berated Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in the Oval Office in a shocking confrontation that was broadcast live around the world. On Monday, Trump suggested Zelensky, quote, won't be around very long if he refuses to make a deal with Russia.
President Zelensky supposedly made a statement today in AP. I'm not a big fan of AP, so maybe it was an incorrect statement, but he said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time. And he better not be right about that. That's all I'm saying.
Trump's shut-off of arms shipments prompted shock, anger, and condemnation across Ukraine and much of Europe. Germany's likely next chancellor, Friedrich Merz, called attacks on Zelensky a manufactured escalation. French Prime Minister François Bayrou said Zelensky's treatment was, quote, marked by brutality, a desire to humiliate. And the Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk called on European nations to massively increase military spending. Stock prices of European weapons manufacturers soared Monday. Ukrainian officials have pledged to do all they can to keep the U.S. as an ally and reiterated they remain open to a deal on rare earth minerals. Meanwhile, the Kremlin welcomed Trump's suspension of arms to Ukraine, saying it would push Kyiv to the negotiating table. Global stock markets plunged as Trump's 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada and 10% tariffs on China took effect today. At midnight, Canada announced it was imposing 25% tariffs on $30 billion worth of U.S. goods, with an expansion of tariffs planned in 3 weeks. China imposed 15% tariffs on U.S. imports of chicken, wheat, corn, and cotton, and 10% on other U.S. goods, including soybeans, meat, produce, dairy products. Beijing urged the U.S. to abandon its bullying stance and engage in talks instead.
The United States should engage in consultations with China on the basis of equality, mutual respect, and reciprocity to address each other's concerns. However, if the U.S. harbors ulterior motives and insists on waging a tariff war, trade war, or any other kind of war, China will play along to the end.
In addition to hitting the affected industries, consumer prices are expected to increase for a wide range of products, including cars, electronics, gas, and grocery items. Meanwhile, the world's biggest semiconductor chip maker, Taiwan's TSMC, announced another planned $100 billion expansion of its manufacturing operations in the U.S. for a total investment of $165 billion. Cryptocurrency prices briefly spiked Monday after Trump announced plans for a U.S. crypto strategic reserve that includes Bitcoin, Ether, Solana, XRP, and Cardano. Critics say cryptocurrencies are too unpredictable to be a safe choice for a reserve asset. Israeli forces launched fresh attacks on the Gaza Strip Monday, killing at least 2 people in a drone strike on the southern city of Rafah. Relatives who gathered to mourn the dead condemned Israel for once again violating its ceasefire agreement in Gaza.
How do they say there is a truce? Where is the truce while they are killing people? He went to see his house next to Alamina Station, and they killed him.
Separately on Monday, an Israeli helicopter attack in Khan Yunis left 3 Palestinians injured. Israel's latest ceasefire violations came after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reimposed a total blockade on Gaza, hours after the first phase of the ceasefire deal expired. Palestinian officials condemned the renewed siege, saying the use of starvation as a tool of war is a serious violation of international humanitarian law. The cutoff of aid drew condemnation across the Arab world and from countries including Canada, Germany, Spain, and Turkey. On Monday, the U.S. State Department said Trump's Mideast envoy, Steve Witkoff, is headed to the region to broker an extension to the first phase of the Gaza ceasefire deal or to advance to the second phase. In the occupied West Bank, Israeli forces shot and killed a young Palestinian man earlier today as they raided a building in the city of Jenin. He's at least the 27th person killed in Jenin and its refugee camp since Israel's military launched what it calls Operation Iron Wall more than 6 weeks ago. Meanwhile, Israeli authorities announced the death of 40-year-old Jenin resident Khalid Abdullah in an Israeli prison where he'd been held for months without charge. The Palestinian Prisoners Society says his death brings the public publicly disclosed number of Palestinian prisoners killed in Israeli custody since October to 61. The group reports thousands of prisoners face severe violations, including torture, starvation, sexual assault, unsanitary conditions, and the deprivation of medical treatment. The leader of the Democratic Republic of Congo has ruled out direct talks with M23 after the Rwanda-based group seized eastern cities, including Goma and Bukavu, in an advance that killed at least 8,500 people. On Monday, the United Nations said M23 fighters abducted at least 130 sick and wounded men from 2 hospitals in the city of Goma last week. Meanwhile, the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reports more than 500 patients with the contagious viral disease mpox have fled clinics in eastern DRC. Africa CDC warns the fighting is worsening an mpox outbreak that's killed 180 people and sickened nearly 3,000 so far this year. Back in the United States, the former head of the Social Security Administration's warned interference from the Trump administration could result in beneficiaries missing payments within the next 3 months. Martin O'Malley told CNBC, quote, "Ultimately, you're going to see the system collapse and an interruption of benefits. I believe you'll see that within the next 30 to 90 days. O'Malley added that, quote, "people should start saving now," unquote. His warning came after the Social Security Administration notified workers of significant workforce reductions in the days ahead as billionaire Elon Musk and his Doge operation look to slash the agency. On Friday, Musk blasted Social Security as a Ponzi scheme in an interview with podcaster Joe Rogan.
Well, I mean, the government's one big pyramid scheme, if you ask me.
Yeah, well, you can tell me better than anybody.
Social Security is the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time.
Fresh protests erupted around Washington, D.C. on Monday, condemning President Trump and Elon Musk's deep cuts to the federal workforce. In Silver Spring, Maryland, hundreds of people rallied in front of the offices of NOAA, that's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, days after the Trump administration laid off 650 NOAA workers nationwide. This is Mike Tidwell, director of the Chesapeake Climate Action Network.
I'm here with about 1,000 people at least, demanding that all dismissed workers at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration be reinstated immediately and no further cuts are made. NOAA is critical to safe seafood that we eat, to weather forecasts involving dangerous hurricanes. A million different ways NOAA is a critical part of our lives, and we need to keep this agency strong.
Over 1,000 people protested the NOAA layoffs in Boulder, Colorado, as well. Senate Republicans confirmed Linda McMahon as head of the Department of Education Monday in a 51-45 vote. Trump and McMahon have threatened to dismantle public education. Washington Democratic Senator Patty Murray spoke out against McMahon's confirmation from the Senate floor.
We need a Secretary of Education who will put students first, not billionaires, who will stand up for our kids, every single one of them, even if it means standing up to Donald Trump and Elon Musk. And, Madam President, on each of these accounts, Linda McMahon fails to make the grade.
President Trump's acting U.S. attorney in Washington, D.C. has demoted at least 8 senior federal prosecutors who worked on January 6th Capitol insurrection cases. Ed Martin, who's backed Trump's lies about the 2020 election, reportedly moved some prosecutors to entry-level jobs and compounded internal turmoil at the Justice Department. Last month, Ed Martin declared he and other federal attorneys are Trump's lawyers, in direct contradiction to his oath of office to be an independent, Constitution-abiding officer. The ACLU has filed a lawsuit challenging the Trump administration's planned transfer of 10 more immigrants to Guantanamo Bay. If successful, the case could lead to a broader halt on Trump's transfer policy, which legal and rights experts say is unlawful. The Pentagon sending over 5,000 more troops to the U.S.-Mexico border, including a Stryker Brigade combat team. This despite border crossings having sharply dropped in recent weeks. In other immigration news in Tacoma, Washington, dozens of imprisoned immigrants ended a 3-day hunger strike after ICE promised to address worsening conditions at the Northwest Detention Center. It was the 4th hunger strike since the start of the year. And hundreds of protesters rallied in California's East Bay over the weekend to oppose Trump's proposal to reopen the Dublin Women's Prison as an ICE detention center. The prison was dubbed Rape Club due to rampant sexual abuse by prison staff. This is activist Aimee Chavada, a former prisoner who survived sexual abuse at the facility. She was a plaintiff in a class action lawsuit against the Bureau of Prisons.
Nobody understands that the severity, the trauma, the abuse that we went through is inhumane. Me as a U.S. citizen went through trauma, sexual abuse, mental abuse, verbal abuse by the officers that were told to take care of us. We were not taken care of. We did not get medical treatment. If you put immigrants in this ICE detention, let's be real, nobody cares about them. Nobody cares about immigrants. What kind of help are they going to get? We're going to repeat the story. We're going to repeat the story of abuse.
To see our interview with Aimee Chavada, go to democracynow.org. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York, joined by Democracy Now!'s Juan Gonzalez in Chicago. Hi, Juan.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to all of our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.
Democracy Now! Is funded by viewers like you. Please give today at democracynow.org/give.